Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome and thank you so much for tuning in to a very special edition, a very special collaboration, I should say, between EduMatch and EdTech Talk. We have here today a very, very special treat. We are talking about elevating your teaching using the PIC-RAT model. It is definitely a pleasure and an honor to introduce our two speakers for today. So first, let's start with Mark Magawe, who is a sixth grade science teacher at Charles Carroll Middle School in Prince George's County Public Schools. He graduated from the Philippine Normal University with a degree of Bachelor of Secondary Education with a major in chemistry. He was a former chemistry teacher at Fair Park High School in Louisiana. Mark and his wife Janice were blessed with two children, Mendeleev, named after Dmitry Mendeleev, so he's a science guy, and Margot. And when not in school, Mark is active in his church and community and currently serving as the coordinator of CFC Kids in East Maryland. Mark is currently an MA in Educational Technology at Loyola, Maryland. And I have to say, I had the pleasure and distinct honor of having Mark in one of my classes, and he is phenomenal and mind-blowing. And he's also an author. He's an author of a chapter of a book that we have collaboratively written, and you'll have a chance to win a copy of that today. And also, without any further ado, our very special guest of honor, Dr. Royce Kimmons, who is an assistant professor of instructional psychology and technology at Brigham Young University. He received his PhD from the University of Texas at Austin and has also had previous appointments as a postdoc researcher at UT Austin, as an assistant professor and director at the University of Idaho, and a high school language arts teacher in Oregon. He's authored over 100 journal articles and book chapters and had many widely used open textbook chapters for teachers on edtechbooks.org. He's received numerous awards. His work has been featured in prominent news outlets. His work focuses on open education, social media, learning analytics, and classroom technology use. In 2016, he presented the PIC-RAT model, which he's here to talk about today, for technology integration at the U.S. White House. And he is the founder of edtechbooks.org as well as equitypress.org, which are open textbook publishing platforms. So wanted to say welcome to both of our guests today. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic on over to Mark, who's going to get it started for us today.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah. All right. So, hey, we have some viewers right now. So thank you so much for tuning in. And I want you guys to answer the question while waiting. I want you guys to introduce yourself, where you're coming from. Maybe some are coming from other countries. And let's answer the question, how do you integrate technology in your classroom? So, yeah, so let's, guys, just use the comment box in the Facebook. So how do you guys integrate technology in your classroom? Hi, so we would like to welcome Ms. Tisha Richmond, okay, from Oregon. All right. Hello, hello, hello. So we have also viewer from Kansas City Public Schools. All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, so to begin with, let's answer the question, how do we integrate technology in our classroom? All right.
All right, fantastic. So I see that while people are still answering, then perhaps we could go ahead and get started.
Yeah. So welcome again. So we are privileged to have Dr. Royce Kimmons right here to discuss about PIC-RAT 101. So many of you might be wondering what's PIC-RAT. So we are privileged today to have Dr. Royce Kimmons to discuss more about PIC-RAT. Okay. So I'm gonna drop. So in today's session, we aim, guys, to introduce the concept and the current need for PIC-RAT framework, and we are also targeting to conduct some personal reflection on our daily instructional practices in relation to the use of technology. And of course, lastly, we're going to focus on specific examples of how we can fully practice the PIC-RAT framework. So of course, let us reflect on this quote. Which word in this passage stood out the most, okay, and why? So let's reflect on this quotation right here. So what do you think, or which word in this passage stood out for you the most, and why? Let me ask Dr. Sarah. Dr. Sarah, which word stood out to you the most for this particular?
For me, I would say the word effective. Like I love that the word effective is underlined and made to stand out, because that just that really draws attention to it. And it's so important because, you know, to me it means not just using tech for tech's sake, but using it for a purpose.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So of course, although we are coming from different places and we might not personally know each other, but I believe that we are all here for a common goal, and that is to implement a big positive change in our school and classroom. So for tonight, we are going to take about 2 minutes to take the pre-test. So let me just drop the link in the chat box right here. All right, so it's right there. So if you have the time to take the pre-test, so thank you so much. You have the 2 minutes to take the pre-test, guys. Thank you so much.
Just popping in really quickly, I just wanted to say thank you so much for making that pretest. That pretest will make you eligible, I do believe, for a random drawing at some point during the presentation. So just go ahead and chime in with your thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Wow, so we have 2 participants already finished the pretest. Thank you, Raymond Pekjo and Andreline from the Philippines. Thank you so much for taking that pretest. All right, so we have some viewers from the Philippines. All right, so before we formally start, let's have some fun facts, guys. So the first lucky winner, of course, will have the ability to win a book, okay, that was authored by my classmates and, of course, me. So you're eligible to have that at the end of the presentation. So let's have this first. So before being known as Adobe Photoshop, an early version of the software was called what? So before being known as the Adobe Photoshop, an early version of the software was called what? So you can just...
So this is a good one. I think you might have people stumped, so. Okay. If they don't know, then you all can still Google it. But yeah, and yeah. So I'm sure that somebody will come back with the answer, and we'll post it on the screen when someone has it.
All right, sure. All right, so good evening again. So again, we are very fortunate to have Dr. Kimmons right here. So we're gonna go straight to the topic right now. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Kimmons, the one who developed and introduced the PIC-RAT model. So many of you are wondering what is PIC-RAT. Dr. Kimmons is right here with us. Dr. Kimmons, can you please explain us what is PIC-RAT, why is it important, and why or how is this model different from other technology models like Summer, TPAC model, team, or LOTI?
Yeah, so that's great. Those are great questions. So we have lots of technology integration models in teacher education. And so when I started working in teacher education, training teachers to go into the schools, I quickly realized that we were trying to train teachers for a task that was ever evolving. So if I train teachers today to go in the classrooms of tomorrow and next year and the following year, if I train them to use specific technologies, if I train them even to do specific tasks, that may no longer be relevant next year or the year after. So when I went through my teacher education program, I had an entire 3-credit course that was devoted to iMovie, a very old version of iMovie. And I remember leaving that course thinking, well, that was fun, but what do I do now? When I go into my classroom, I'm not gonna have Macs in my classroom. I'm not gonna have access to iMovie. When I do, iMovie is gonna be so different, even if I did gain access to it. And at the end of the day, also, I struggled with, well, how am I actually helping my students learn with this tool? And so, we have lots of tech integration models available, like TPAC is probably the most popular in research. SAMR has historically been one of the most popular ones in practice amongst teachers. But we really wanted to try to figure out, how can we train teachers to go into the classroom and effectively use technology and to remember the things that we teach them. Because it's one thing to have a college student come to your class every day or every other day and get them to reflect on their teaching. But when they're in the classroom, when they are working hard just to manage their classes, to get lesson planning done, and to just teach, they can't go through this massive checklist every day of, oh, how am I integrating technology? What am I doing? And so we wanted to try to figure out what are the core questions that teachers can and should be asking themselves whenever they're using technology that will be beneficial for helping them to continually improve their practice. And so when I first started at University of Idaho, I was training teachers, and both in my classes, but also we do a lot of professional development with in-service teachers. And I started by teaching them all the models. I taught them TPAC and SAMR and RAT. RAT was created by Joan Hughes at the University of Texas. And as I did that, I started to get feedback from them. Okay, which of these is most helpful? Which of these do you struggle with a little bit? Which are not necessarily useful for the classroom? And over time, I began to see that RAT was the most useful for folks. And that resonated with my own experience as well. As I was teaching in my classrooms, it was really helpful for me to think about what role is the technology playing in my own pedagogy. So if I'm going to introduce technology, am I just replacing something that I'm already doing? So that's the R in RAT. Or am I amplifying or improving what I'm already doing? Or am I doing something completely different? Am I transforming my practice so that now I'm able to do things that I otherwise wouldn't be able to do? And we saw that as a hierarchy. And so very quickly, I started to see and believe, and I had data to support this, that teachers were finding of the existing models that RAT was the most useful for thinking this through. But then when I came to BYU, I got engaged with working with a lot of other faculty on BYU campus of trying to update all of our tech integration courses so that they were on the same page, so we were doing similar things that would be effective for preparing teachers for the classroom. And in the midst of this, we were also hearing reports and information from the United States Department of Education about what they were seeing nationwide about how teachers were using technology. And they were expressing some frustration because they noticed that teachers were using technology more and more, but when they would go into classrooms or get reports from schools, the students were generally passive in how they were using the technology. So they were watching YouTube videos, watching Khan Academy videos, watching lectures on YouTube or on PowerPoint. And this was frustrating to the Department of Education because they're investing all kinds of money into this, into supporting technology in schools, and they felt like there must be better use of technology than just this passive learning. And so they started to push for this idea of active learning. And that was about the same time as maker spaces and these active learning spaces were really starting to come on the scene. And so we reflected on that and thought, well, it seems like there's kind of a hierarchy here. It seems like sometimes it's valuable to have passive learning going on in the classroom where students are just listening, kind of like what most of you are doing right now, just sitting back and being respectful and taking in information. And that really aligns well with the bottom rungs of Bloom's taxonomy, because you have to be able to listen and to reflect in order to remember and understand things. But then actually to be able to apply knowledge, you need to be able to interact in some way. And so we started to think, well, okay, maybe there's a higher level of technology use that is interactive. But then also getting back to Bloom's taxonomy, the highest level of Bloom's taxonomy is creation. And this idea that, and I mean, this speaks to constructivist and constructionist views of learning, in that the best way you can teach someone the physics behind how bridges stand up is to have them build a bridge, right? And so, Seymour Papert famously, have these constructionist activities where we teach kids physics principles, and then we have them build bridges to see whose bridge would last the longest, and we use that to learn about the underlying science of that we're learning about in the classroom. And so, again, we see kind of a hierarchy there, that just as interactive is better than passive, creative seems to be better than interactive in the sense that it allows us to get at levels of learning that we otherwise wouldn't be able to get at. And so we saw that as a hierarchy as well. So when we put those two things together, that gave us a really neat way of analyzing, neat and tidy and fast way of analyzing any practice that we had in a classroom. We just ask ourselves, what is the effect on the pedagogy? Is it replacing, amplifying, or transforming our pedagogy? And then we ask, what are the students actually doing with the technology? Are they passively sitting there? Are they interacting through the technology, or are they creating through the technology? And we saw that that created a hierarchy. And Mark, I don't know if you can put the image up there, but as we started to reflect on our own practice and reflect on the practices that we started to see with our teacher education students and in-service teachers, we noticed that whenever we would give students access to a new technology, the gut reaction tended to be to do something that was passive and replacing, simply because that's just the easiest thing to do. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but what we started to realize was that most of what we were seeing in a lot of the classrooms we were working in were down in the bottom left area of this matrix. And so then we started to say, well, okay, maybe we need to work with teachers to help move them more toward the top right. And so that shaped how we started to approach teacher education here at BYU, and also in how we started to work with teachers in our in-service programs to, first of all, help them to be self-reflective about their practice using this model to help them define maybe ways that they could improve in very incremental, easy to understand ways that are quickly actionable without having to go, read an entire book or sit down and go through a massive checklist every time for every lesson plan, but something that they could quickly use that would be beneficial and help them to push their practice forward.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Royce. My next question is, I was just thinking of my lesson today, and I think I belong to PR. Would that mean that am I on the bad place? So is there a such thing as a bad place in the PIC-RAT model, Dr. Kimmons?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I get this question a lot from students. And like I said before, the problem is that there are lots of different ways to effectively integrate technology. And the literature around TPAC, for instance, says that every single situation is its own wicked problem. It's a very depending on your grade level, your context, the students you're teaching, your own familiarity with the technology, how to effectively integrate technology in every single setting might look a little different. What PIC-RAT does is allows us to think about our practices and to see kind of where do they fit overall in this matrix. And if what we're doing, so I don't think there's anything wrong with having practices that are in the bottom left. I mean, like currently when I teach, I'm using Zoom a lot. I do some lecture in Zoom. I try to do some more interactive breakout rooms and those kinds of things too, but there is quite a bit of lecture that ends up happening in Zoom. So, I mean, you could argue that's passive and replacement that I'm doing. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But if that's all I'm doing, that's a problem. If every single time I'm using technology in my classroom, my students are sitting there watching me use it or watching me talk or watching a video that I put on for them, then that becomes a problem. And so I wouldn't say that because one of your practices or even many of your practices are in the kind of bottom left area of this, that's necessarily a problem. But what this allows us to do is to ask, okay, are there certain practices that we can move more toward the top right, more to the right, more to the top? And if we can do that, then that's generally a good thing to do. And so it's intended to kind of shake us up a little bit and to help us to, again, continually reflect on our practice and to ask ourselves, are there ways I can push ahead a little bit more? But not to make us feel bad if we still have a few practices down there in the bottom left.
Oh, thank you. Because I felt so guilty because, on the x-axis, we have their replaces, amplifies, and then transforms. So can you tell us the difference between these three, or how am I going to distinguish between these three: replaces, amplifies, and then transforms? How do I distinguish if my lesson replaces, or it amplifies, or it transforms?
Yeah, thank you. So, and again, this particular part of PIC-RAT, the RAT part, comes from Joan Hughes. And so she wrote about this back in 2006. And so she came up with these terms. And I think it was a brilliant way of thinking about it. And it reflects a lot of the discussions that were happening in ed tech up to that point and beyond. And that when we are thinking about using technology in our classroom, the gut reaction often is just to do what we were already doing. So if I get an interactive whiteboard, I'm just going to start using it the same way I was using my chalkboard or my non-interactive whiteboard. And so that would be a replacement example. So if I'm not functionally improving anything that I'm doing, if I'm not improving learning in terms of like having the technology there is not allowing my students to learn more or learn faster or to learn better or learn deeper, then that would just be replacement. Amplifying goes beyond that. So amplifying means that I'm improving what I'm doing. So I'm taking my existing pedagogical practices and I'm making them better. So an example of this would be things that make me more efficient. So maybe before I had students keep journals on spiral bound notebooks in my classroom, and now I'm using Google Docs. And with Google Docs, I can be more efficient in collecting all their journals together and giving them feedback. So I'm able to give them feedback faster. I'm able to give them more feedback. And I'm able to give them focused feedback on specific passages in their journals. So I would say that's an example of amplification because it's taking the exact same practice and it's making it more efficient, more effective, and allows me to just do it better. And so students can learn better through that experience. Transformation, though, is kind of a different animal. In that transformation, the principle behind transformation is the idea that there might be valuable learning experiences and approaches to learning that we cannot do without these technologies, that they empower us to learn in ways that we could not do we could not learn in a pre-digital world. So they allow us to connect in ways that we couldn't have connected before. They allow us to express in ways that we couldn't have expressed before. And so if you take away the technology, then the ability to learn in that way is gone as well. So I think about, there are lots of technologies I think that lend themselves to transformative uses. One that comes to mind is like Google Earth. So if I grew up in a very rural city, very rural Texas. So where I went to school was about 30 miles away. I loved paleontology, and my brothers and I all loved paleontology. And so we'd get whatever books we could find about dinosaurs. But I never met a paleontologist. I never met anyone that went to grad school. I think I knew one person in high school that had a master's degree, and that was it. So like I never had anyone around me who was a scientist or had engaged in science that I knew of. But to think about, well, how could technology help break down the barriers that were preventing me as a young kid in a very rural area from getting any kind of experience with this thing that I was passionate about? Well, technology can help with that. So tools like Zoom and Skype and, for instance, can connect our classrooms with experts all over the world, right? And so if I'm teaching a paleontology unit in my class, even in rural Texas, I can invite a professor or grad student or someone who works at a dinosaur dig to come in and talk to my students so my students can ask questions. And I see that as a very transformative use of technology because it's breaking down barriers that barriers are the barriers exist to our students based on a variety of things. Like one is a geographic barrier, which I'm illustrating with this idea of, the needs of rural kids in rural areas. But there are lots of barriers that technology can help break down. And so by using technologies in these ways, we can help break down barriers and provide for learning experiences that otherwise would not be possible to our kids. And so, again, I think of those kind of as a hierarchy. I also think of them as that amplifying uses of technology are typically harder to do than replacing, and transformative uses of technology are typically harder than amplifying. So again, not everything has to be in the transformative category, but it does seem like we need to be pushing some of our practices into that category. And if we're just replacing in our classrooms, then at the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves, well, why am I using technology at all then? Because I could do everything I'm doing without any of these fancy gadgets, and I could do it a lot cheaper. And I wouldn't have the principal mad at me because I'm spending all this money on technology in my classroom.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Royce. I'm looking at the city right here, creative transformations, creative transform. So can you give us a specific example on how we can attain that? Of course, we teachers would like to attain that kind of CT, creative transform. So,
Yeah, so I mean, I think there are all kinds of ways, and I think one of the traps we fall into in educational technology sometimes is what's called sometimes in the literature technocentric thinking. The idea that like our thinking is focused on the technology rather than on the learning. And technocentric thinking is dangerous because it leads us to think that the technology itself has the answers, when in fact your practice is what's most important. It's how we approach teaching with the technology that's most important. And so one of the examples that I like to give in talking about any of these is just using PowerPoint, because PowerPoint is not an exciting technology. And like whenever you mention PowerPoint in class, like a tech integration class, people just roll their eyes and fall asleep because they're just used to, PowerPoint being used in a very kind of passive replacement kind of way. So if the instructor creates a slideshow and shows that to the class while they're lecturing, that's a very passive replacement approach. But even PowerPoint can be used in very exciting ways, I think. So, I mean, many teachers have students create their own PowerPoint. So maybe we split students into groups to learn about things. So we can say let's move this to the solar system. Let's say I'm teaching my kids about the solar system. So I put my kids in groups. Okay, this group's going to learn about Mars. This group's going to learn about Jupiter. You guys use PowerPoint or Google Slides to create a short presentation about this, and then we'll put them all together into a presentation, present to the entire class. That's better in my mind than having just the teacher lecture on what Mars is, what Jupiter is, and so forth. But I still don't see that as transformative, because students are creating things, but they could have just, taken pictures out of a magazine and talked about it like this is, and just talked about, this is what Mars looks like, this is what Jupiter looks like. But with PowerPoint, I think even with PowerPoint, I think you can get at the creative transformative level. One thing that I did in my classroom was having students create interactive PowerPoints that they could then hand off to other students to learn about the subject matter. So again, if you're teaching middle school science, you're teaching about solar system, space science, having students create a museum kiosk that they could go and put into a museum that anyone coming to this kiosk could learn about the solar system. So they could create an entire interactive learning experience themselves through PowerPoint, where someone clicks on a planet, it takes them to this place. They click on links within the planet, it gives them information about the planet. To do that requires the students to gain all of that knowledge themselves, the same as that they would gain if they were just passively using the technology or watching a video. But it also requires them to apply it, and to apply it in a very creative way, so that they're, again, operating at higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So even if something as unexciting as PowerPoint, I think that you can create learning experiences that are both creative and transformative. Another quick example would be something like Google Earth. Google Earth is just a really cool tool for a lot of reasons. You can use it in very passive ways, where maybe you as the teacher are showing students things on Google Earth. You could use it in interactive ways, where maybe you send students to specific places in Google Earth that they can explore and answer questions about. Or you can use it in creative ways, where maybe students are creating travel guides through ancient Rome, and so the students are creating the experience in Google Earth that then they're having other students to go through. So again, like the actual content knowledge they're learning might be the same in all those scenarios, but but the level of knowledge or the type of knowledge they're gaining, according to Bloom's taxonomy, is fundamentally different, because now they're not just learning about the sites in ancient Rome, but they're also learning about how do I go and create an experience for someone else so that they can learn the important things associated with this. So this requires them to engage in this process of, evaluating what are the core sites, why are they important, what is their distance from one another. If I was going to go on a trip between two of these places, how far away are they? And all those kinds of things are it's cognitive processes that they wouldn't be engaged in if they were just sitting there watching you as the teacher go through Google Earth.
Wow, so that's a lot of information, Dr. Roy. So many teachers are watching right now, and maybe they are interested in using this PIC-RAT model. How do you think teachers can start using this model, Dr. Royce?
Yeah, so it's intended to be simple. Just memorize the questions and ask yourself the questions. So we also have a video that if you just do a search for PIC-RAT, you should come across my stuff. But if you go to YouTube and search for PIC-RAT, you'll see a short animated video that we created that, again, kind of just walks you through the process. But the approach is just simple. Whenever you're creating a lesson plan, you can just ask yourself, okay, how is my use of technology in this lesson plan affecting my pedagogy? Is it replacing, amplifying, or transforming what I'm doing? And then once you answer that, just ask yourself, okay, what am I expecting my students to do? Are they going to be passive in this process, interactive, or creative? And as you just answer those two simple questions, it at least gives you some insight into kind of where you're at here. And again, if you create a lesson plan and you find everything's a passive replacement, that's probably fine. If you consistently find that over and over again, then that starts to become then I think that's potentially problematic. And so that would be a cue to me, if I was in that scenario, to think, well, maybe I need to be using technology to teach my students at some higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, using the PIC side of things, or I need to really, make the full use of the technology resources that I have available to me and the relative advantages that they actually bring, and move more toward the amplifying and transforming side of things.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Sarah, for providing us the link to the video. Yep. On the y-axis right here, so we have the PIC. So it says the student's relationship to technology is. So I see that you are focused on what the students are doing with technology. So where other SIMs or where other models did not do that as well. So why did you choose to do so, Dr. Royce?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think that is reflective of one of the big critiques of a lot of the other models is that you can't find students in them very well. And so, so much of a practice in recent years has been trying to help us to get focused back on students. So like in teacher education, for instance, I don't get engaged directly with the K-12 students. I'm working with the teachers. And so it's easy for like me to lose sight of the students. And so having a model for me to help my teachers to keep focused on the students is really valuable, so we can both be focused on the students together. I mentioned before, this also came in response to the U.S. Department of Education and some of the things that they were seeing that I think sometimes there are temptations to integrate technology just for novelty's sake, or just for tech's sake, to be able to say that I'm integrating technology so that I can say that I'm kind of the tech savvy teacher. And it's not that that's a bad thing, but at the end of the day, if it's not benefiting the students, then that's a problem. And I think too, we've been here in the 21st century now for over 20 years, and we're still talking about 21st century skills. We're still talking about, the need for preparing our students for the modern workforce, for the modern world. We're still talking about things like information literacy, digital literacies, and that's all. It's great. We need to be talking about those kinds of things. But what it suggests is that we haven't fully figured out how to do that well. And so it seems like we need to, if we're going to use any models in our classroom to help us reflectively improve our practice, those models need to be student-centered. Those models need to be keeping in mind not just the pedagogies or the actions that the teachers are going through, but actually what the students are doing as well, and how they're engaged in that learning process.
Thank you so much. So do you think we need to provide this copy to the students so they know as well that
I haven't thought about that. I haven't found the need to do that. I think more the idea is to provide them with active learning experiences and creative learning experiences. And I mean, I think that it's okay to talk about those kinds of things with them, but you know, anyone who's worked with kids knows that they tend to prefer active learning experiences to passive ones, and creative ones to interactive ones. And so I don't know that we necessarily need to open our minds to them about all of this. I mean, there's no reason not to, I guess, but I don't think it's necessary to. But I think that, you know, students respond well when we are intentionally trying to make things more interactive and more creative for them.
All right, thank you so much. So, Dr. Royce, at this time of pandemic, you know, there's so much going on. You know, teachers are starting to go back in school, doing hybrid session. So at this time of pandemic, do you think teachers will find it more challenging or more beneficial to use the PIC-RAT model?
Well, everything's more challenging now. And so, I mean, everyone, it's amazing just how teachers have responded during the pandemic, the Herculean efforts that they put forth to address these unprecedented problems that we've seen. And so many teachers have been, you know, taken on the really difficult task of moving entirely to remote learning. And so, I mean, everything is harder right now. And so, yes, it probably is harder to find a second to reflect on our practice when we're trying to make sure that, you know, we're meeting the needs of our students remotely and our own kids aren't screaming in the background at the same time. But so, yeah, everything's harder, but I don't know that it's impossible. And I also don't, and it also seems like it can be really valuable as well. So, you know, my attitude is this is a tool. If it's helpful for you, use it. If it's not helpful for you, don't worry about it. Because at the end of the day, like, that's why we have theoretical models. That's why we have tools, is to help us to make our jobs easier and to help us to do our jobs better. And I trust teachers, and I trust that teachers can be, if we give the teachers the tools and the time and the resources, they will astound us, and they do astound us on a daily basis. And so, so I guess how I'm now warping your question, Mark, is that, is this useful in a time of pandemic? And so I think that might be the core question that teachers might need to ask themselves, or districts need to ask, is in a time of pandemic when we're struggling just to, you know, keep kids learning at a distance, is this still useful? And I think it can be. I think so we hear so much now about, and this started the first week when we moved to remote teaching, so much about Zoom fatigue, so much about students even being really creative about creating ways to trick their teachers into thinking that they're on the Zoom call when they're not there. But it speaks to the idea that oftentimes when we moved, well, for the most part, when people moved to Zoom, this doesn't just apply to K-12, it definitely applies, maybe even more so, to higher ed. When people moved to Zoom, to this emergency remote teaching approach, the gut reaction, the knee-jerk reaction, is to try to replace what I'm already doing. And I think that's fine, again, in a pandemic situation. If I'm just trying to survive, it's okay to just replace what I'm doing. But I hope that we move beyond that. I would hope that we also ask ourselves, well, are there affordances of these tools that we're using that help us to not only do as good as we were doing in the classroom, but maybe allow us to do things that we couldn't do in the classroom to begin with? So, like, one simple example is that we have all kinds of learners in our classrooms, and the online medium might be more beneficial to some learners than to others. So I think, for instance, about introverted versus extroverted students. So if you're in a class and you have a really active experience, maybe you're having your kids debate a topic, for instance, those extroverted students in your class are just going to dominate that learning activity. And if you're an introvert, like me, like as a kid, I was completely introverted. It's so easy to kind of fall between the cracks or to get in the corner, and it's really hard to get me out of my shell. But part of the reason that introverts struggle is that they have to work through the things that they're going to say and how they interact before they actually go and do it. It's not just a shy versus non-shy kind of thing. It's actually, there are differences in how students process information, versus an extrovert will learn as they are communicating. So introverts have to learn first and then they'll communicate. Extroverts communicate and learn at the same time. So if you're in a classroom that's really active and fast moving, those extroverts are going to step up and they're going to kind of dominate and be really served well in that situation. Introverts, though, it's easier for them just to kind of like get distracted or not have their needs met, and not participate at the same level as the extroverts. Now, I don't know that Zoom necessarily helps with that, but I think that if you think about, well, are there ways that we can use technologies to allow those introverts to really process their thoughts first and then participate with everyone else? And yeah, something like asynchronous discussion forums are great for doing that. So like in higher ed, for instance, in a lot of my classes, when students read a discussion or read a book or read a journal article, I'll have them reflect on it in a discussion forum, and then we come together as a class to talk about it. Because by giving them time to put their thoughts on paper, it allows especially the introverts to be able to participate more fully than they otherwise would be able to. And so, I mean, that's just one example of maybe there are ways that maybe we weren't serving all of our students to the best way possible before the pandemic, and maybe there are ways that maybe the pandemic is shaking us up a little bit to use technologies maybe slightly different ways, that maybe we can help address some of these persistent needs that we were kind of ignoring, or at least just weren't fully addressing, a little bit better. And I mean, that's not a critique of anyone's practice. It's just that, you know, we all can always do better. And there are affordances that technologies bring that allow us to address students' needs that maybe we didn't think about before.
Right. So in the near future, when everyone uses your model, hopefully, so what do you think would be the future of the school or the education? So when you see everyone is using your model, Dr. Kimmons?
Oh, I don't know. I think, you know, again, like, I think just practices that keep students first and practices that honor teachers' abilities to problem solve in their classrooms are foremost in my thinking. And so creating kind of streamlined tools like this that are, you know, really easy to implement and to use, and that really value the teacher's ability to reflect on their practice and to address problems that they see in the classroom on the fly by using all these different tools and resources they have available to them are what matter to me. So I don't think there's like a, not that you were saying this, but I don't think there's like a cookie cutter solution to all the best tech classroom would look like this, and all of our classrooms need to look this way, because each class is going to be different, and that's okay. It's okay for them to be different. But how I hope that they're the same is that they are focused on making sure that all the students' needs are met. They're focused on providing teachers with the resources that they need to address the problems that arise and the needs that arise in that particular situation.
Thank you so much. So let's practice. I know there's a bunch of information, guys. So let's practice what we have learned so far. So maybe Dr. Sarah can drop the Jamboard link. So I have 5 different scenarios, and I'm gonna ask the audience if you can open that link to the Jamboard. Maybe we can try to drag and drop. Let's see what we have right here. Right. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah. All right. So what we're going to do is we have 5 different scenarios. You can pick any slide that you want to. Okay. So just write your name on your slide. So I can see 2 of you join. Thank you so much. And maybe read the scenario, and maybe you can drag it, whether it's PR or IR. Example, students pass a touch-enabled tablet. So where do you place it in this PIC-RAT model? And maybe we can ask Dr. Kimmons his expertise if we're doing it right. So let's try to analyze. So the first one, students pass a touch-enabled tablet. So if you think it's under CR, then put it under CR. So let's do that. So let's pick our own slide. Thank you. Oh, wow, amazing, amazing. You can see most of you are joined. Thank you. Oh yeah, PIC-RAT. I hear you, Peer Deck. I love Peer Deck and Nearpod. So let's try dragging it. So what we want to do is to read and drag it. Where do you think it belongs? Is it under PR, PA, PD? So let's do that.
And I was muted for everything I just said. I was just saying that if you look at the top, everyone, and you'll see like 1 of 14, you'll see arrows to kind of click through. So just go to one where you see all of the sticky notes intact, and you can feel free to go ahead and participate. And I see that Tisha and Facebook user are both driving home, so we will keep you in spirit. But everyone else who is in a location that is safe and secure, please feel free to participate on a Jamboard slide.
And just to ensure that this is a safe space, you're not going to be judged by where you put things. And that's part of the reason for doing this, is realizing that.
Yeah, for me, most of you all are coming up as anonymous, some kind of animal. Okay, so I'm seeing that there's some responses on, I saw a few of the slides where people were moving stuff around. I see on slide 1 that someone has put their answers. So, and they're still going. Perfect. Okay.
All right. So maybe we can talk about this first slide right here. So students are asked to keep an online journal in a blog. So what do you think about this, Dr. Kimmons? So I think the participant placed it under PR.
Yeah. So I guess before I answer that, I'll just say I do this kind of activity with my teacher education students intentionally to show that we might not all agree on exactly where things go on the matrix, and that's fine. Because again, the purpose of this is not to ensure that we all completely agree on, where something fits on this arbitrary model, but it's to use this as a tool for thinking about, are there ways that I might be doing things a little bit better? And so the case students keeping an online journal and a blog. So I would say that's probably replacement because students could be keeping a journal in like a spiral bound notebook. And so if it's not actually like improving my practice or amplifying my practice, then that might be a replacement. But I would also say that's probably creative because students are writing. They're engaged in a creative process. Now, I think that, again, these prompts are very short too. So you don't know all that's going on with this activity. You don't know how the teacher has structured the learning activity from this. And so I think that this same activity could be more amplifying or transforming. So say I'm having students keep an online journal in this blog, and I'm also having them respond to each other. So I give them prompts every day, and then I also have them respond to one another. That's something that maybe I could have done with spiral bound notebooks, but it certainly would have been difficult to have us hand around these notebooks and respond to each other's journals every day. So I think you could even make the case at some point that becomes transformative. So for instance, I do this in some of my classes where I require students to self-reflect in Canvas. So they'll I'll have a discussion forum, I'll give them a prompt, they'll reflect on the reading or the prompt, and then they'll respond to one another. That's not really something that I could do in an offline setting, at least not reasonably well. And so again, I don't care so much whether you and I agree whether this is creative transformation or creative replacement or anything like that. But what this says to me is that if I am just having students post things in an online blog, might there be ways that I might push that a little bit more to make it a little bit more interactive or amplifying or transformative? And so I think, allowing students to collaborate around those journals might be valuable toward moving it more toward the top right. And so that might be one example.
So how about this one right here? So a teacher designs a web quest for students to complete on their own time. So
yeah. What do you think, Mark? Where would you put that?
Let's see. Teacher design. So yeah, I'll put it under city. No, the students did not design it. Maybe under PR.
So I think, yeah, the key idea is that when we talk about creative on PIC, it's creative in the sense of construction, like the student is creating an artifact of some kind. So it's not just that we don't mean creative in terms of like novel or new. We mean creative in the sense that students are taking their knowledge and they're constructing an artifact of their knowledge. So the students didn't create the web quest, the teacher did. Now, can we have our students create web quests? Sure. And that would be more toward the creative level of PIC-RAT. So web quests are great. I mean, doing an activity like this could be fine. But again, if I'm reflecting on my practice, I might ask myself, well, why do I have to be the one that creates a web quest? Might my students learn more if they were creating the web quest themselves, in which case I would rate it higher on the PIC side of things. I think it's at least interactive, though. Yeah. So because the students are interacting with the web quest, they are moving through it themselves, I would anticipate, with this description. So I would say this is probably interactive. I'd probably say it's also amplifying, because I don't think that you could, I think this is taking something, maybe even transformative. But again, it comes down to more like the reasoning behind why you're doing it. So like, I would say this is probably interactive, amplifying, or interacting, transformative, because the students are interacting with the technology, because they are moving through the web quest themselves through this inquiry-driven experience. And it's also something that is I would anticipate it is better than what I would have been doing otherwise. It's improving something that I was already doing. It might be allowing me to do something that I otherwise wouldn't be able to do at all.
So it says creative, amplifying right here. So this is your favorite, Dr. Royce. I know a teacher uses PowerPoint as part of his or her lecture.
Yeah, so that's the favorite whipping boy. So yeah, that's just a clear example of passive replacement most of the time. Now, I think that there might be cases where it's amplifying. So you teach science, Mark. So are there things that are, right, you're a science teacher, right, Mark? So
yes.
Are there things that are difficult concepts to convey, like electron clouds, for instance, that would be difficult without some kind of a visual associated with it? So in which case, I think that depending on the PowerPoint, it might be amplifying. So if it's just like a PowerPoint with text, so I remember when I was learning about Texas history, I'd go into my Texas history class, I'd sit down, the teacher would put up this slide of handwritten notes on this overhead projector, and I would just sit and I would copy every word verbatim. And I do that every period, every day. And so if you had a PowerPoint that was just text that students are copying down, yeah, that's passive replacement. But if it's some kind of like media-rich PowerPoint where you are making clear to them concepts that might be difficult to understand without some kinds of visuals associated with that, then I would see that as amplifying for sure, even if it is just passive and they're sitting there just watching the PowerPoint.
So I think a math teacher answered this one. Students write answers to math problems on an interactive whiteboard.
Yeah, so I think I would agree with that placement. So it's interactive for sure, because they're the ones up at the whiteboard. That's great. I mean, you aren't the one using the whiteboard. The students are the ones using the whiteboard, which I think is better than if you were just the one using the whiteboard. But it does seem like replacement. So you could just do that I would anticipate with just a non-interactive whiteboard or a chalkboard. So in which case, why do we have the interactive whiteboard to begin with? Now, if we did a similar thing like this using like virtual manipulatives, for instance, so I have all these different manipulatives I can use, or a calculator in the interactive whiteboard, or like for moving money around and counting change, for instance, then that seems to start to become more amplifying or transformative. If I'm having the students now come up and use the interactive whiteboard to answer problems where they are using the whiteboard to answer problems or solve problems that they really wouldn't be able to do or do as well with a chalkboard or a whiteboard.
All right. So, Dr. Royce, I'm envisioning myself, during the department meeting that we're doing this, I mean, there's no definite, answer for each scenario. How can you help us determine whether it's
yeah. So part of it is I don't want to be the one to tell you what is the definite answer. I mean, we do have some guides. Like I've written an article about this. I think the PIC side is a little bit easier to understand. I think that it's clear to see just what are the students doing. So are the students passively sitting there? Are they interacting either with the technology, like in a game or simulation situation, or are they interacting with other students through like some kind of collaborative tool? Like I can use like Google Docs in a collaborative writing process. I would see that as interactive potentially, or creative, or the students creating through the technology. So that side's, I think, clearer. The RAT side, I think, comes down to, it depends a little bit on your previous practice. And again, I think that even in those meetings with our colleagues, we have to keep this idea in mind that, there are a lot of variables influencing what is actually effective technology use in my classroom. And so this is meant as a heuristic, just a fancy way of saying like a tool that just helps us to think a little bit. It's not intended to be like a Scantron or check the box kind of thing where, yes, I did this, therefore I'm effectively using technology in my classroom. It's intended to get us to push our thinking a little bit. And so as you're talking with your colleagues or as you're in that meeting, if you walk away with different interpretations of, what is effective technology integration in your classroom, I'm okay with that, because I don't think necessarily that high school biology integration has to look the same as kindergarten language arts integration, right? But I do think that you can engage in meaningful conversation about your own practice, about what you might do to make your practice better, and that this can be a way of helping to facilitate that.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a bunch of information. So it's 6:55, and it's always a struggle for the buy-in to teachers. So if I am to, of course, open this to my colleagues, to my co-teachers, how do you think you can help me to buy in with this kind of model?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great question, and it's I think that it comes down to, because we have a history of trying to get teachers to do things that they don't find any value in, and this happens over and over again in educational interventions, and where maybe there are kind of top-down approaches to telling teachers, oh, now you need to teach this way, even though last year we told you need to teach another way. And then as teachers are kind of jerked around in all kinds of directions, at the end of the day, they just get frustrated and they don't want to jump on the next bandwagon just because they know it's going to change the next year again. So teachers have to be able to see the relative advantage of something that you're proposing to them. And so there's that. So they have to be able to see that it's actually going to be useful for them. It has to align with their own understanding of what good practice already is, at least in some ways. And it has to be usable. They have to be able to use it right away. And so that's intentionally why we've made PIC-RAT so kind of simple, is because, I don't know, as I just pitch it to other people who, a lot of them who have been in education for years and years and years and have seen every new innovation under the sun, I'm often surprised by how much it resonates with them. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I can ask 2 questions. Oh, well, yeah, obviously having my kids interact or create is better than just having them passively sit there. And so I think it just comes down to, again, honoring teachers, recognizing that they have expertise, and trying to help them see how that expertise aligns with a tool like this that might help them to push their own thinking a little bit further. I don't think this is a revolutionary model in many ways, because I don't think we're trying to change the way teachers think in some ways. We're instead trying to build upon the good practices that they are already doing and help them to articulate what is good about the things that I'm doing and how can I continue to take those good things that I already know and apply them in new situations.
No, I think this is a great model, Dr. Kimmons. That's why, PGCPS is using your model. So I believe it's
great.
All right, so we have come to an end, unless there's a question from our live audience. So we would like to thank Dr. Kimmons, and where's Dr. Sarah right now? All right. Hello. Welcome back.
All right. Yes. Thank you so much for this fantastic discussion. This was awesome. I know I personally learned so much. I wanted to thank both of our special guests, Dr. Royce Kimmons, the creator of PIC-RAT, as well as Mr. Mark Magawe, who is a fantastic, phenomenal educator in the district that I'm proud to work in as well. So just wanted to thank you both so much for your time, as well as for the great information. Thank you to everyone who is watching. Thank you for your interactions. This is great. I know that Mark has a post test. So in both groups, we'll drop those in the comments if you wanted to test your knowledge. And from there, then we will also draw winners for To Whom It May Concern Volume 2. So if you're based in the United States, then we'll ship you a physical copy. If you're based outside of the United States, then we'll get you a Kindle version. But yes, indeed. So we'll be randomly drawing winners. So just stay tuned for that. And thank you all so much. So enjoy the rest of your evening or whatever time of day it is. And thank you again for joining us. And I'm putting up all the comments. Everyone's saying thank you. All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.